As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission, I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain, keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah.
Salutations, New Haven. Welcome to Community Radio 103.5 FM WNHLP. It's the place where it all happens, and this is my premiere show. Welcome to the Readman Truth to Power Hour, and I have some incredible guests for you today. And just before, because it's kind of rebranding, it's a new show, so I just want to reintroduce myself real quick. And if we think about Jennifer Lopez had a song, Jenny on the Block. Well, I'm still the same kid on the block. And the kid on the block grew up in a very diverse community. And I love that community, was embraced by that community. And so, you know, I'm still the kid on the block, and I like to stand up for the people on the block. And today I'm bringing us two incredible guests. And I'm bringing them at a key time. So we're talking about DEI across the country and so many like dog whistles going out. But what do we have? I have deserving, exceptional, and included women, and I'm so glad they're here. And I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, because they not only have a story, don't only think of them as female leadership and higher. They've got these great stories about these schools and the work they do, and it's tremendous over there. So I'm going to start in my link over here. I'm going to see Jay, and you can introduce yourself, and you should introduce yourself as the formal title. You know, you are a doctor.
Yes. Good morning, Dr. Jessie Turner, and good morning, all listeners and viewers. My name is Jay Kandaya, and Dr. Jay Kandaya, and I am currently the inaugural dean for the College of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences at CCSU. So wishing everyone happy Valentine's Day and sending good love and affection and compassion.
All right. Excellent. And Carmen, you can do the same. And remember, we want to know you're a doctor. You're like the associate VP too. I've got a dean and an associate VP on the line. This is like, I'm with the big time people.
Well, good morning, everyone. Jessie, Dr. Turner, absolutely appreciated the music. So great start already. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone out there. My name is Carmen Valoria, and I serve as Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs at Central Connecticut State University. And one of the things that I always like to lead with is that I am a proud first-generation college student, and that is the lens that I use to view my portfolio and my work. And I'm very excited to be here. So like my colleague, also sending tons of love and hugs, not only because I think they're badly needed now, but also because of the day that it's Valentine's Day. So
Valentine's Day. Yes. Love is in the air. We love it. It's I'm doing when I go home after the show, I got a little kickback for doing the show on the 41st Valentine's Day. So my wife was like, "You're doing a radio show today?" It's an inaugural show, you know, so I've got to make up for it tonight over there. So, but I part of the piece over here, and you have incredible stories to tell about the work you do, but also you have this piece to tell us. So I'm going to go with one of the things and we'll start with you, Carmen, because you're on the screen right now. So what's been the most rewarding and challenging aspect of being a woman in leadership in academia? People don't realize it's harder. It's easier for people like me that look like me, for males. That's the stuff. But for women, and then we start talking about women from diverse backgrounds, that's even harder. So Carmen, could you tell us about, because we only do this work because we love it, and it has a lot of challenges. Could you tell us about that?
Absolutely. And thank you for framing it that way, because I think it's really important. And even you saying it, you know, coming from you as a white male in this society, right? Absolutely. I would posit that is heard differently, right? So for me, when I think about challenges and rewards, I tend to see them somewhat intertwined. And what I mean by that is that, as I mentioned, I'm a proud first gen, leader. I was an emergent bilingual student, low income, all of those identities. So I think for me, it's about tapping into an epistemological position grounded in my lived experiences, which also includes intersectionality of my identities, my ancestral connections and knowledge, community-based knowledge, along with resistance and agency. And all of those things, I think, allow me to show up authentically, which I think is a reward, right? To be able to bring my full self into spaces unapologetically. But that's also a challenge because, as you alluded to, sometimes these are not as accepted, right, in more male-centric, for example, sort of dominant spaces. So I see them both as sort of challenges, but also as a reward. Yeah.
And I will be the one in the room to say it was harder. Okay, so it's harder to be a woman in leadership, particularly in higher ed, but I would say anywhere. I was talking earlier with Janae this morning, and I have a class of mainly women educators in my literacy class. And last night I was reminding them that 45 years ago, when I first stepped into my first classroom, I was part of a district of 40 schools, 30,000 students in Jersey City, New Jersey, a diverse community. And there were no female principals or vice principals in 40 schools. And I could count the people of color, males, on one hand. Probably I can. The 5 fingers are probably too much. This is and I could have looked around. I think I said to Jay, I looked in my school, and my principal, he did the best he could, but he was inadequate. And I could look around, and I could see dozens of women in my school that could do the job, not only twice as good, but 12 times as good. And so I reminded them, because they had asked me the question. Someone said something about, well, DIE went too far. We're protecting, trans. And I'm going, well, I don't have any problems with trans people. I have problems with people who want to hate and hurt people. That's who I have a problem with. But that kind of concept over here. So that's why I was really glad to have you two on, and I'm gone too far. Jay, I guess the question for you is, what were your challenges? What were your rewards? Because you don't look like me as the dean. I've been to school for 27 years, and every single dean looked like me. Okay, every single president before President Turo came looked like me. Just to put that down there. So Jay, Can you tell us about your rewards and challenges as being a woman in higher ed now?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the positive because I'm always a very positive person. So in terms of positivity or rewarding, I think being a woman leader is very helpful because you tend to break all the barriers. Somebody is going to see you as a role model and giving you the opportunity. They realize, oh, if she can do it, you're going to be, serving as a role model for others who are aspiring to become women leaders. Right. So that's one aspect. Second aspect would be also being a leader, you can influence policies and institutional changes, bring about institutional changes by working with all levels. You see, from grassroots, from upper administration to lower administration, and even to with faculty and all of those. So I think that has been a positive thing. Besides that, of course, like everybody else, I would say personal growth and advancement. I think the challenges we need to keep in mind, if I were to think about two or three, would be being able to balance the work-life balance, being a woman, and then you have your family responsibilities, so you think, where do I strike the balance, between the two? And then also making sure that I am, you're amongst a lot of people. So you need to make sure that you know how to sell yourself. Sometimes as women, from my personal observation, what I've done is usually you downplay yourself, you see. So that oftentimes becomes like a little barrier. So I think you need to be an advocate for yourself, you see. And I've learned it the hard way, where I have to stand up for what I think and I'm saying, and to showcase myself and say, hey, guess, look at all my recognitions. I'm equally better or good or even better than, some of y'all. So I think that has been a huge challenge. And also always another challenge has been, I'm glad that I worked with men, because they kind of role modeled. I learned a lot of good positive behaviors from men too. So you knew where to balance that, and generally, I mean, from my perspective as a woman, that's emotional. We bring emotional intelligence. We are also compassionate. Not that men aren't, but just generally tend to be more nurturing, more compassionate. We tend to be more collaborative. We always think about the team effort, So that's what I think, So, those are some of the pros and cons, or the good and the bad, as I would say.
All right. So while we got that, and we'll keep you here, Jay, because there's another story. This show is not about really female leadership. This is about the incredible work that you two are doing as leaders in higher ed. And it's incredible. So one of the things, I don't know what it's like to be an inaugural dean of a new school. I was part of the old school where some of those people were part of us, and some of us were crying when people were leaving, and we all wondered what was this. And I remember President Toro said, people, what are you going to do? And I'm saying, well, you're going to have to pay 2 deans, 2 associate deans, 2 secretaries. Are you going to save any money and stuff like that? But now we have this inaugural school. So tell everyone really why they should come to this new school. I think that's the place. And we're going to come back to you, Carmen. We're not letting you go.
Perfect. No.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for asking that. I'm here. I love this position and I love what I'm doing. I'm here because of my love for students, for faculty and the community. How can I work towards advancing the students, towards their growth? And then more so, why CCSU is because I had the pleasure when I was the associate dean at Ball State University, working with my team, and this was in Indiana, working with a collaborative team in forming the new College of Health. So being a registered dietitian nutritionist and a fellow of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, I bring in the healthcare skills, my expertise, as well as being a researcher and a clinician together. So I was so fortunate and seeing that what I can do at CCSU, 53% of our students are first-gen students. So giving them the opportunity to advance themselves, not only professionally, but also to serve the community. So I really like that part of engaging the community to improve their overall health status, bringing our students. We have a clinic here, which is called as the Community Health Education Clinic, where we go out and serve the needs of the community. Whether it be, in terms of nutrition, in the terms of screening for diabetes, cholesterol, hypertension, whatever it may be, as well as mindfulness, meditation. And we currently have 5 units within our college, which really represents, we've got social work and we've got, mental health and marriage therapy. So that brings in nicely exercise and human performance. As well as I'm thinking about broadening and working with upper administration and thinking about other programs that we can leverage and we can grow, towards the advancement and making our students marketable to address the healthcare needs of not only the community, but also to be competitive in the workforce. So bringing that interprofessional education experiences into the clinic.
No, and so we've got free clinical services, but and we're going to go to Carmen, but we want to make sure that the name of this new college is the College of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences, and being inaugural. So Central's the first school of education in the state, the 6th in the nation. So I think we're the first in the state to have a College of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences. Anyway, I just got to make sure. I like to say the name, and we'll come back to those things. But Carmen, tell us about what does an associate BP do? And you were talking about first gen, so I want the audience to know, what does that mean? That means people like me. I'm the first person to ever go to college in my family, first generation. When you were reading off your backgrounds other than the bilingual. And by the way, my Spanish is so poor that my abuela would slap me, would tell me, stop, don't speak. But that idea, first gen, so I know we're going to get to that, but really tell us a little bit about what does an associate VP do, but then tell us that story of why it's important in this time, in 2025, to be understanding how valuable. This is not, we're not thinking deficits, we're thinking about the future is our first gen students. But anyway, go ahead, Carmen, I'm taking too long. You tell us your story of your.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I'll start with that. So the institutional definition, and these varies across the spectrum, but the one that we use is neither a natural or adoptive parents have received a baccalaureate degree. And that is important because, for a case in point, one of the things that I lead at the university through our work as a First Scholars institution is this faculty and staff training program that is known as the First Gen Advocate Academy. And the thinking behind that was that in order to raise awareness, we know that language matters. So obviously that definition is really important, not only for all of us to be on the same page, but also for data collection purposes and things like that. But even just yesterday, it was the first session, and I highlighted the definition, and I was talking about why the definition matters and words matters and things like that. And our tech person who was in the room, a CCSU student, interrupted me and said, "I just learned that I'm first gen." Up to that moment, he did not know that he was first gen. So the reason why I lift that is because oftentimes students will come in and say, well, my sister went to UConn or CCSU, or my mom went to Texas and received a 2-year degree, but the emphasis is on the 4-year baccalaureate degree. So the reality is we're hovering at 53, 54% at Central. So that's a huge segment of our population. And some of the work that I lead as an associate vice president, in addition to this First Scholars work, which is part of a national network, and that entails being part of really critical conversations across the country, doing some professional development, really thinking about our institutional practices and policies and so forth. But I also lead CASA, which stands for Central Access Success in Academics, which houses a lot of our federally funded programs like Student Support Services. We have 2 at the university, one that is the classic TRIO program. The other one is specifically for teacher education. We know that there's critical shortages in our schools. So there's a need to not only have more teachers going into more students going into teaching and into the workforce, but also diversifying the teaching force. And it also has educational talent search that works with our younger students in the area middle schools in New Britain and also our high school. So I lead that work. I also lead some of the work around career development, our academic cultural centers and so forth in terms of my portfolio. But the first gen work, I think for me, I'm trying to weave that into everything that we're doing. So for example, even career services, they now, all of them have been sort of trained through the First Gen Advocate Academy. They're leading also with that first gen lens, with the thinking that if you lead with the first gen lens, it's going to be good for everyone, right? But we're also really prioritizing the first gen experience and really taking stock of what are some of the real challenges, right? And what are some of the real opportunities through a strength-based, intersectional approach rooted in social justice that really acknowledges, right, that for some students, we know that zip codes matter, right? These lagging indicators matter. So for us is really thinking about how do we look at the students that are coming in and how do we better prepare to be an institution that is ready for them and their needs.
Perfect. So when we're looking at these lenses of what we do, it's important to understand that first generation students. So you mentioned TRIO. Well, I'm an EOP student. That was a program for poor students coming to university. I can't imagine what I would do without that support. I wouldn't have been able to make it. At home, there were I remember my mother clearly saying to me, I stopped being able to help you with homework somewhere around the 6th grade. And I can't give you a lot, but I can give you bus fare. I took the bus 3 years for my first 4 years of school. My undergraduates think that's weird, but yes, I took the bus, and she'd say, I'd give you some lunch money, or I could give you lunch. My lunch is better than the one they'll have. And I that first generation student necessarily doesn't have the role model or the support. In a way, they have support. My mother, there was everybody in the family. I'm the only son. So I have 4 sisters. I come from a single parent household. So all the ladies in the house will always carry me on their shoulders. I would not be here without them. But what can they do when they haven't had that experience? They can love me, they can support me, but they can't guide me. So those programs you're talking about, those things over there, those are the things that I'm hearing it in your voice, because I think it's also, it's in me. It's like, people carried me here, so I should be helping carrying other people. And your mission should be to carry everyone across, not just first gen, but everyone. We're always better. So I love that concept. Jay, could you give us a little, how did you become, what made you get a PhD? What made you even go to college? People ask me and I say, I don't know.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Carmen, for, I liked your, input and everything else, And so I think for me, what made me go into college was actually my parents. My father was very adamant because he wanted me to go to England to study. You see, let's put it that way. I was born in Malaysia, and I am of, Sri Lankan ancestry. So my father was very adamant that I, thought that I should go to England to study. My brother was one of them that broke all norms because he came to the United States. He was a little bit of a rebel. And so then he suggested that maybe I should explore that avenue. And so, to be honest, I took this map, closed my eyes, and ding, it fell at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, actually. So I applied, and not knowing anything. Trust me, not knowing anything, just being so naive. It just landed in Nebraska. I applied, and guess what? I was so fortunate that I got accepted into a very, very good school. My mentor was one of the top in the area of, expert in metabolic nutrition. She was amazing. She took me under her wings. Of course, then of course, when I came here, I had all the challenges because, you've been pampered at home, you've been safeguarded, you see, and then you're thrown into this culture where, you have to learn everything. And of course, being used to the British system, as the British pretty much ruled most of the world, just so you're aware, and then coming to the American system was a learning curve, a little bit, of adjustment, but I'm so glad that I did well. I had a lot of mentoring and guidance from friends, from family. And then I'm glad that, once I finished that, then I started looking around for a job. And when and actually, after I finished my bachelor's, I was like, I wanted to go back. I was at that time in love with my husband, whom I'm now married to, and he had moved from Sri Lanka to England. And so then I said I was going to go, and my major professor like, no, I want you to stay here. And so long story short, I got the opportunity to do my master's and then my doctorate. And then once I was done, I thought, well, I'm just going to be, my dream actually was to be a housewife. I thought, I will just be this dolling up housewife, cooking, but it was far-fetched. It truly was far-fetched, And so when I got into academia, I loved every bit of it. Like I said, I loved the students, seeing all the struggles they went through. I could relate to them because being an international student, going through all the difficulties, I understood what that was. So, so that was a gift in itself. And then I was able to integrate, and I took every opportunity that came. Any opportunity that came, I jumped on it. They asked me to teach at the medical school. I went out and I said, hey, I'm willing to teach, So I've been teaching over at the IU School of Medicine for some time, since 2012, and then any opportunity. So that's how I broadened my horizon. And then I'm a researcher and a clinician. So then as a result, I worked with students, with faculty, mentoring faculty and all of those. So that kind of molded me to be what I or who I am at the moment. So I thank every soul that walked into my life and has walked into my life and will be walking into my life ahead of time, you see.
Wow.
So, and I have absolutely no regrets, absolutely nothing.
Good, great story. These are things that I don't get to hear in our normal interactions on campus. So I'm already getting to get some of these things. So when and you may have alluded to it earlier, Janaea, saying women empathetic and collaborative, but we'll ask you a comment because whenever there's an issue, so I've been at this campus now, I don't know, 27 years, and whenever the issue of diversity comes up, they don't. We point. If so, we're going to talk about I don't know, Hispanics or thing. I'm going to look at Carmen in the room. I'm going to put or you, Jay. I'm going to look at the women. I'm going to look at people of color on campus, and some of that to me says I'm exhausting. I'm exhausting people. But there's a piece that I know that how do you approach this leadership from those perspectives, not only as a woman, but as who you are as a Latina, how you are as Sri Lanka. You know, how does this happen as immigrants? How does it happen from a bilingual? And I think there are gifts. So we've all said there's gifts. Like people carried me here. I didn't swim across the river. They carried me here. So tell me about the your approach to that decision making when you're faced with complex and controversial issues. And there are controversial issues that shouldn't be controversial issues facing every college campus right now in America. So if we start with you, Carmen, because you got to deal with this all the time.
No, absolutely. And I first want to sort of amplify something that you alluded to, right? How we tend to sometimes in our practice look at people who are right in our society sort of othered, right? As the experts are the ones to speak for an entire, group, diasporic group and so forth. And in some ways that is, taxing, right? And there's a lot of, researchers and a lot of practitioners who would even call it emotional unpaid labor, or I've even heard it called the emotional tax that we must pay, right? So I understand that it could be seen as both sort of a burden, but also a responsibility. And for me, not only because of my lived experiences as someone who grew up in this country, like I said, as an emergent bilingual student, low income first gen, I grew up with a single mother. I carry those experiences, right? They come from a real, place of that informs my lens, as I alluded to earlier. And so for me, as a practitioner, particularly working in Boston public schools, right? And being in Boston, a place with so much, that is considered like the intellectual mecca of the world, and you have these huge institutions, like Harvard and MIT, and yet working in a district where there were huge disparities and a lot of need. I worked in schools where I saw the students that were struggling in neighborhoods. I saw what they didn't have necessarily in the schools, right? So what we talk about unequal schooling, right? And even though I was part of many who were really advancing this equity agenda and trying to address those issues, the reality is that those things impacted me, because while I saw the structural limitations and barriers, I also saw tremendous gifts, and I saw students who just had imagination and had creativity and just a passion for wanting to get ahead, and they just needed some people to believe in them. So I say all that because in times when the rhetoric or the prevalent rhetoric has us questioning values, right, of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think that as an equity-minded practitioner is part of my values. So I lead with that, despite what may be happening in a larger context, which we know impacts all of us, right? These ideological forces really do impact us. But in order to really enact and be effective and also be an authentic advocate for social change, I need to still prioritize those values in both my leadership and in my decision making. So I'll stop there. But, you know, considering, for example, I'm very interested in educational outcomes, right? So I need to consider what I mentioned earlier, zip codes. I need to consider funding formulas that are not equitable. And I need to consider even health factors, right? When we look at, you know, the hierarchy of needs, right? We need the basic shelter, love, nutrition, all of that, food, and what have you. So for me, I have to continue looking at it from an equity-minded perspective.
So you're going through the lens of equity, experiences and things. And so, Jay, if we took you to that same stuff, you know, how do you approach these controversial times or issues that come up through your lens as Sri Lankan woman, you know, who has a PhD, who I think we talk about values. So I heard Carmen's value over there, and I heard her say mom, you know, and I'm thinking like, there was no deficit in my house because I was in a single parent house. I just had twice the love. And you put right up front, what's a value? She said, I remember hearing her say, my father put the dots. It wasn't like you had a choice. It was like, this is what you're going to do. And a father, think about that father who so many fathers in the world would say, well, let's push the sons first. You know, let's push this one first. But here he was saying, well, this is my daughter. And of course, she's going to. So I know that piece. But tell us about how you approach decision making through your lens if the issue is controversial. And it's not just controversial. It's the regular conversations we're having. When someone in the room says, you know, oh, they're DIE hire or something, you know, some silly stuff that I'm hearing in the world, just conversation people are. So how do you approach that? Because you are the dean of a school, you have a number of faculty, you have students, you don't have to go to Washington to hear this stuff. It will pop up in conversations. How do you address that?
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think the key thing what we need to keep in mind, what I always do is I like to assess the needs of the students. I work with the students. I work with students from all walks of life. So, that's how I interact. I mean, even yesterday, to give you an example, we had an event, in our college, in the Dean Suite. And I literally ran out on the streets after the evening event, asking the students, who wants food, extra food, come along. Of course, I never told them that I was a dean. You see, I just told them there's extra exciting food, guys. Come on over, help yourselves. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Just so as the college student, you would have said free food. That drew me to every event there was.
So I think the key thing is understanding the needs of the students, talking to them, and I'm so glad that I have, I've got tons. I mean, I interact with, like I said, all walks of life. I assess the students' needs. I find out what they are interested in. I also talk to faculty. I also use data. Sometimes data can help us clearly envision what is happening. I mean, how many students are we bringing in? Why are we not bringing those students? Is it because they did not have the fairgrounds, or is it because did they have some disadvantages or advantages? But at the end of the day, I would say like hard work needs to be paid off, you see? So if we start everybody with the same, some of them are less advantaged, than the others. So let's try to bring, like Carmen said, bring them all to the same playing field, and then also making sure that we assess what are the needs of the faculty. Faculty are great, going to town halls. I have had conversations with, this is the position I like, where we can be advocates for students, for faculty, and with, legislatures, if we need to talk to and say, are we on the same platform? What is happening here? You see, at the end of the day, I will always say, we need to have data. Data will help identify if there's retention. Why are they not retaining? Why are they leaving? Is it because of not lack of food? Is it because lack of transportation? Is it because they don't have the accessibility to education, or they started out with a different playing field? They were not on the same playground together. So that could be one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is looking at it from a different point of view, whereby seeing where do we want to, what is our vision. For me, when I come in here as a dean, I'm looking, what is my long-term vision? My vision is to be prepared, because looking at the generation ahead, we need to be preparing students, faculty, to serve the community. Are we looking at communities that are, disparate communities? Are we addressing their needs, their healthcare needs? I'm a clinician, so I'm very concerned about making sure they have all the healthcare needs. What are the marginalized populations? Are they being served in terms of, whether it be accessibility, to healthcare, or is it going to be, towards food, or is it going to be, provision and assessment, for healthcare assessment? So I'm always looking at ways how we can go and serve the community. Let's prepare highly competent students. When somebody has walked through the struggles of life, they're going to be better healthcare leaders. I'm a strong believer of that. I walked through so many struggles in my life, but I think at the end of the day, it has made me to be what I am. I'm a fighter, because in the sense I always take a negative and make it into positive, because just because I am, I've been defeated once, I always say, I never say die. I will rebound back. I'm very resilient, and I'll make sure that I take the setbacks as a positive, and I jump much higher than what it's called for.
So, like Nelson Mandela said, don't judge me by how many times I fall down. Judge me by how many times I get up. I love that concept. I'm going to shift us in a minute, but one thing I want you to think about, we have that chat box. If you can write in the chat box how people can contact you, because the next 10 minutes are going to go quick, and then I'm going to say, 30 seconds, do something. So somewhere in the chat box, I want people, I'm hoping, let me tell you, if you're out there and you're thinking about coming to a university in Connecticut, this is the place to be, and these two women can help you. And that's not to say to my friends at Southern and Eastern and Western and Wesleyan and, Connecticut College and Yale, I'm going to invite you on, don't worry. But, I'm also today saying, I'm selling people that are saying, I've heard you say all day long, the two of you, saying that you're not about yourselves, you're about service to others. And that's just great. So now I've done that little spiel over there. The piece I want to ask you, and we'll start with Carmen, so we alternate. But really, Carmen, what advice would you give to those new women rising up to take the challenge, to go to do everything from just being in the Boston classroom to being to being a chair, to being a dean, to being an associate vice president? So what advice would you give to women? And you have multiple hats. You're going to be giving us a hat through, say, I can give you a hat through a Puerto Rican picture too, over there, and in that sense, So what advice would we give to young women, all women, but also I wanted to put a little lean onto what about diverse women? What advice would you give them?
So I would start with the need to have multiple mentors across the span. I think that is really important. As I tell my students and even some of my direct reports right now, I still have mentors and I learn so much from them, and they come in all shapes and sort of sizes. And I think Jay alluded to this as well. Men absolutely could be mentors. I had an incredible mentor in a woman who could not be much different from me. I mean, I'm petite. She was tall. She was from New Zealand, had a funny accent and came from great privilege. It's something that I didn't, but yet she understood and saw something in me and decided to become a mentor when I needed one, right? So I always tell, be open to mentorship. So I think that's one advice that I would give, in addition to being a mentor as well. I think for me, as someone who tends to be very relational and authentic in my leadership, I don't buy into this notion that it could only be one of us. I think that there's plenty of space for a lot of us, and it is also my responsibility to amplify the voices of those who are coming sort of behind me to shine the spotlight on them. Not this idea of giving them voice because they already have voice, but amplifying their voices and putting them in positions so that they also get to shine. And the perspective that I take is when my staff, my direct reports shine, I also shine. So I lead with that in mind. So those are some practical things. However, I think being pragmatic, I would also say that you surround yourself with people who are going to be critical friends and who are going to tell you the truth, even, when it's hard to, because leadership at times can feel lonely. And you need those people that are going to not only have your back, but those people that are going to support you and are going to call you up on things and tell you when, you need to step back or when you need to go back and do something, maybe amend, something. So I think that's really, really needed. So you need those critical friends. You need to be open to different perspectives. You need to be open to being coached. You need to be open to being mentored. You need to be a mentor to others, and be mindful that many people, and I'm so appreciative of the many people who have mentored me, but many people open doors, right? And have paved the way, and always acknowledging that I think is really, really important, because none of us make it on our own, despite what we sometimes are led to believe, this, ideology of pulling yourself by your bootstraps. None of us make it by ourselves. So sort of recognizing that. But again, going back to the pragmatic piece, it could be lonely at times. The type of leadership that certainly with my intersecting identities I bring, I think looks and feels different to many. But I am also, like Jay, very hopeful that I hope to also build structures that will support those differences in a way that not only tolerates them, but also celebrates them. Because having diversity of thought and opinions and being able to be in a space where one is appreciated and one is also celebrated, I think all of those things lead to innovation. All of those things lead to us taking care of each other as a community of practitioners. And at the end of the day, I think that's all, that's a human need and that we all want. So long way of saying, but I think mentorship, being, coachable, and willing to learn and work hard, but also stay humble that many have paved the way, and that we are always in the process of becoming. Just as I indicated to the First Gen Academy when someone said something yesterday, I said, the day that I feel that I have arrived is the day that I have to leave, right? Because I have nothing else to learn. And no, so I am always open to learning, and I think everyone who's in a leadership position should be as well.
So we're going to go to Jay now, and you're going to give that advice to those people who are like you. Maybe that young girl in Sri Lanka, maybe that young girl in Connecticut, maybe that undergraduate in your program, maybe that person who says, I'm going to do a master's degree. And then God help us when they say, you want to do a PhD? We think you should do that. I remember one faculty told me that, and another said, you're very brave for doing that. And I went to my wife, said, what's he talking about being brave? Then we realized after the challenge, after the climb that mountain, that it was brave. But Jay, give us some advice for women in leadership, and particularly future women in leadership.
I think what I would turn around and say, I agree with Carmen a lot, in the sense that you need to make sure you have mentors from all walks of life, all levels, It can be men, women, it can be your allies, it can be your, friends, everybody, everyone and anyone. I take mentoring very seriously because you learn till you kick the bucket, and so I'm constantly learning because students are a great mentors for me. As much as I serve as a mentor for them, I learn from their students. I learn from their challenges. I learn as to what are the needs that they would require. That's one type of mentoring. Another type of mentoring would be working with the community to find out what is needed. What does the community need? What type of leaders are they looking for? Working with alumni. Alumni would be great. They are industries, healthcare practitioners. They would be great resources. And then also keeping abreast. If I am guiding somebody, I would turn around and tell them, take advantage of every opportunity. For example, I keep myself abreast as to what AI and health is a big thing right now. So look at all the learning developmental opportunities that you can have. Go to conferences if you can. They give a lot of student discount conferences right now, or if I'm a faculty, I'm next month, we are taking a group of students who are going for a conference, and then you role model, you get them engaged in student, memberships and clubs. So that is another style of, teaching them. But also they should be candid. We should be candid and tell them it is not a bed of roses. Life is not going to be a bed of roses. You're going to have some challenges. But then even if it's that 20% positivity, grab that 20% and stay with people who are willing to guide you, to help you through, and listen to the noise behind you, because faculty will tell you, people will tell you candidly. There will be some people who may just say, oh, everything is peachy. I don't want to hear everything is peachy. I want somebody to tell me, Jay, something is radically wrong. You see, and listen to the soft voices, because the extroverts may tell you, but the introverts, they may take some time. They are thinkers. They may take time to think about it, work around it. So you need to be patient, assess the needs, assess everything, anybody that I walk to, even if it's a person that's, a staff member, listen to what they have to say. So I feel it's important, engaging at all levels is critical for any student who wants to advance themselves. Be open to opportunities that come about. Be prepared that you may not be the chosen one, but it doesn't matter. That doesn't mean you were not good. Maybe you were too good and people felt intimidated with you, you see. Then you find a way to maneuver around and become even better, because that's what made me to who I am. All the challenges in life, and I'm so fortunate. I'm really fortunate to my family, my husband, especially my child, and my daughter and my son-in-law, and also my friends who have been around me. So I think that's very, very important. People, I think every person that walks into my life is a gift, and I always consider everybody as a gift. So I think taking advantage of everything.
All right, so I'm going to be wrapping us up because we wrap up in another minute, but first, I'd like to say thank you to Harry, who is an incredible engineer. I want to say thank you to 103.5 FM WNHLLP because of this opportunity to get voice in a time where people are shutting us out. This is an amazing opportunity, a blessing. But I also want to end with, we're not just talking about, I didn't bring you just women in higher ed leadership. I brought you two incredible women in higher ed leadership. I want you to know something about academia, regardless who you are. We have more people we have kicked out the door. If you can't measure up, you can't do the work. We've got faculty members, we've got deans, we've got VPs. We kick people out of the door as quick. If you can't do the job, you can't measure up, then you don't remain. And so when we're talking about leadership in higher ed, of women who have a lifetime of struggle and proven themselves over there. And somebody somewhere has to do this thing to you and say thank you for you have been a blessing. And I think Harry's going to play the music, but if he doesn't, I can't say enough about.
Well, you know what, Jesse? I wanted to say something because when I was thinking, if the music comes, it comes on. But something that I've been thinking a lot about, and I think something that you wrote in the chat was about women taking risks. And I think it is also important that sometimes the message goes out that if there's no room at the table, women, particularly women, and particularly women of color, should bring their own table. And this notion of, filling other people's shoes, bring your own shoes as well.
Thank you. And happy Valentine's Day.
You too. Happy Valentine's Day. Take care.
Valentine's Day.
For quitting on my mission, I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains, haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up.